This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer.
Let's talk about some of the mounting evidence that is there against Bryan Kohberger as we kind of wrap up this year and everything that we've been looking back on. There is quite a bit that is there, even if we are to take the IgG and that sort of stuff out of play, take even DNA out of play here for a moment with the knife sheath and all of that, the phone records. Those are things that we know parts of, but we don't know the full extent as to what they actually have. We've heard about the triangulation. We've heard about pinging. But what we don't know yet is, the Google search history. What actually is on the phone? What images are on the phone? What's on Instagram? There's been leaks and such saying that possibly there was some sort of messages on Instagram between Kohberger and one of the victims. It's an unconfirmed report, but that is possibly out there. No word on if there was a reply back and forth. But what do you think we're going to discover there once this actually gets to trial? Is that going to be one of the bigger bombshells that we're waiting to see?
I can't wait to see the digital evidence, but I will say this with a caveat. I thought they would be more successful in returning DNA from the vehicle. True. Having said that, I think there are many logical explanations why they didn't. And we also do not know, as I've said before, and people have misconstrued what I've said, so I'll say this crystal clear.
Yeah.
DNA is contained in hair, in semen, in blood, in skin cells, but that doesn't mean that hair is DNA or that blood is DNA, right? It has multiple other proteins and components. And only parts of the blood, by the way, even have DNA. My point is that sometimes staining and a blood sample cannot have DNA that's able to be acquired from it. Mm-hmm. So I look forward to seeing if anything blood related was found in his vehicle, even though we know, at least according to the defense attorney's paperwork, that there was no DNA recovered. Tony, one of the things that to me was a red beacon that I saw, that I think many people focused on the fact that, there was nothing found in the car. Well, did you notice they didn't even mention the house, Tony?
Yeah.
Don't you think that if there would have been no DNA other than the sheath found in the house, that they would have said, and also, despite everything they did at the house, no more of Bryan Kohberger's DNA was found there. That isn't what they focused on. They focused on that it wasn't in the car or, in the apartment and the other places. So to me, that was really stuck out to me. And I think it'll be interesting to see what else, in other words, was found in that house.
Are there surprises to be had there? Obviously, all of this under seal gag order in place. What sort of surprises beyond that do you think we're going to see when this actually does go to trial?
Well, I think we're going to see some just fascinating evidence. I look for one of the main points of evidence is when he, again, if it is Bryan Kohberger, attacked, there will be, as he struck with the knife, there will be spatter that cast off blood. It will make an impression around where the killer would have been. Does that make sense? If I'm standing over you and striking you, the blood would spatter on that person as well as the surrounding area, but not where that person is. Mm-hmm. So I really look forward to seeing some of that recreation, if you will, to show the height, to show the logistics of this killer and exactly how he stood over them, maybe knelt over them, leaned over them, and committed these crimes. And I think that'll be telling to show the size of the individual involved, and as well as possibly the right-handed and left-handedness possibly of the person involved.
It's amazing that we're able to narrow things down that way. How solid is that sort of science when it comes to blood spatter and determining the height of the attacker themselves, the position that they were in and such? I remember hearing a lot about that in the case that was featured in the documentary, The Staircase. That was very interesting to see how splatter worked and all that. How well does that read to a jury when we're talking about things like that, and how difficult, or how easy is it rather, for the defense of Kohberger to try and poke holes in things like that?
Well, what I've found is that when you have a scientist on the stand, whether he's talking about cellular phone digital evidence, whether he's talking about blood splatter, whether he's talking about DNA, this is what juries like to hear. They're going to hear witness testimony, and it's going to be interesting to them. But typically what they, really respond to are facts that are brought in that are more indisputable, like scientists talking about why they reach their derivatives. So would that alone be, something you could convict somebody on? No. But when you add it all together, guy in the outfit that was at least, I think she said 5'10" or more, with the bushy eyebrows, combined with this digital cellular information that you're going to have, placing him in and around the area, having the phone turned off at the time, the video evidence regarding the Elantra that he drove. When you add all of the blood spatter that's going to become, an evidence, and then possibly other DNA that could have been left behind, that wasn't addressed by the defense. When you add it all together, it is a recipe. And I think it's a recipe that's going to hurt Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah, well, let's also not forget about the DeSales University study that he was trying to conduct, and some of those questions there, like why did you choose that victim over others after committing the crime? What were you thinking or feeling? That really gets into the mindset of, a killer. I mean, it could be, yes, someone doing some university study work, but when put together with everything else, it certainly looks very damning.
It does look damning. I think the defense, though, is going to try to knock that, if they do even decide to bring it in, with that, oh, listen, these are standard questions. Many people have used it in the program. I've heard some information about that. At least I think that's what the defense will try to run with, right? Another study that was done by another student that was similar, to try to really downplay the role of all of that. But it's going to be very difficult to downplay his own writings that came early on, that talk about the visual snow and some of the other issues. I could see some of that coming in, quite frankly.
Yeah, it will be interesting once this eventually does make it to trial. We've been talking for a long time about when this will actually happen. So far, I think you've been in the lead in predicting this. It was supposed to happen earlier this year. Now it's kicked down somewhere. We don't even have a date. You were saying, I believe on one of our last conversations, you'd be surprised if it even happened in 2024. Are you still feeling that way?
Absolutely. I'll be surprised if it happens in 2025. I think 2026, hope might be a possibility. Just, unfortunately, there will be so many delays with every ounce of this evidence that comes in. Look for the prosecution to have suppression hearings on how it was acquired, on just the facts surrounding each of those cases. And those are going to be a little bit like little mini trials, these little mini hearings. When I look back at, as an example, the case that they put on to limit the media, right? When you look at that, they, I believe, had for sure two media experts on that end.
Yeah.
And then had this exhaustive report that was done. It got pointed out. Experts like these are hundreds an hour.
Yeah.
And a report like that costs tens of thousands of dollars. And that's what they did just for the media. And then, of course, we saw with the genetic genealogy piece, they did have 3 experts on that piece that they hired. And, of course, that didn't fare very well for them.
No, that one did not.
No, that one went south. But that is what's going to continue to prolong that. Those are just examples of, I think, other hearings and issues we're going to be seeing, and the extremes that they're going to go to present their position in those hearings.
Going to be a fascinating year in 2024.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.